Hey guys, King of Charmander's here. Alright, today I'm going to feature you, the most powerful league that Talonflame XL is viable in, and that's actually Open Ultra League. You hate Registeels? Guess what? You got Talonflame. You hate Cresselia? Well, guess what? You got Talonflame. You hate Swampert? Well, guess what? Talonflame can beat Swampert as long as you can land a bird. In other words, Talonflame can actually beat the BBML of, or the big meta of season, what? I don't know, past like what, season 2? Anyways, Registeel, Cresselia, and Swampert are like the most dominant line, and Talonflame beats all of those. The thing about Talonflame, what makes it so powerful in Open Ultra, is that it's the #1 lead, but it also does a ton of damage. In the one shield, it can take out Giratina, Alter, Cresselia, and in Swampert, it can take out Swampert and a 2 shield as well. The reason why you're able to take out Cresselia is because Cresselia's Rock, Moonblast, and Grass Knot. That's the most common move set that Cresselia has. Because you resist both of those as a Talonflame, Talonflame is insanely good in Open Ultra. Now, why people don't like Open Ultra is, well, there's this big metal lug nut called Melmetal that has literally been super meta for the since the preseason and still hasn't lost effectiveness. Behold, the giant metal lug nut that plenty of people had the opportunity to get. And unfortunately, because Talonflame doesn't like rocks, Melmetal will delete you unless you have shields. But I think it's also very dangerous because in Open Ultra there is Gear Altered still does pretty well against Talonflame. You also have Empoleon and Gyarados. So Empoleon and Gyarados are really strong against other water types or with water attacks, and Armored B2 just because it dumps a bunch of rocks on your head. Basically anything with a bunch of rocks will kill Talonflame. Despite all of this, Talonflame is insanely powerful as a lead or as a closer. It's the most like I mentioned before, it's the most powerful lead in Open Ultra. In Ultra Premier, it's number 12, and for good reason, because it's so diverse and it's so destructive as far as the Ultra Premier. It's so diverse and like so many things can be viable. It's a lot better for you to use Talonflame XL in regular Open Ultra League. Alright, here's a huge disclaimer. None of these teams are gonna be probably really cheap. The issue with Open Ultra League is that legendaries and mythicals have so much play over the entire meta that it's really, really difficult to play like, you can still play it without legendaries, but with the inclusion of XLs, like, even if you don't have legendaries, you're probably gonna see a bunch of XLs. And players that have a ton of Stardust like me are grind a lot when it matters. Well, I grind when it matters. Fun fact about King of Charmanders: if it's not good for PvP, you probably won't see me grind a lot. And I did play very heavily before a lot of what happened in the world lately, so because of that I have a ton of Stardust. In other words, I'm cheap. And I'm lazy, so I'll only go after stuff that I need to go after. Other than that, I'm chilling. Anyways, as you see here, we got Talonflame, Politoed, and Cresselia. Again, I'm going to feature 2 teams in the lead with Talonflame, 2 in the back, and then the best team I think that's viable. As you see here, we got Talonflame lead. You got Politoed XL as a switch, and Cresselia as your closer. So this is kind of a double say switch team, to be honest with you. So the pattern that I'm going here is basically if your opponent loses lead, some people like swapping Swampert in. If they swap Swampert in, guess what? You got Cresselia. And Cresselia Grass Knot absolutely destroys Swampert. So that's basically the pattern. Politoed's out there because Politoed with Blizzard does a lot of damage to Giratina Altered, and it also does heavy damage against things like Melmetal, etc. It's really good. So this team is very, very powerful for the sheer pressure it puts on your opponent, and it has a lot of bulk. As you see here, it's really bulk, really safe. This team is super, it's really good. Coverage and consistency aren't A+, but they still do very well and still key in on a lot of key patterns in Open Ultra League. As you see here, you do very, very well against the Ultra League meta. You destroy... There's not a lot of X's in here. You're probably not going to see a ton of Venusaurs out in the world out there right now. And as you see here, it's really freaking... Like, Talonflame XL as a lead is incredibly powerful. Couple it with 2 powerful chargers and tanks into Politoed and Cresselia, you got a destroyer team. Your biggest weaknesses, and the reason why I think this is really a super freaking ungodly powerful team, those are your biggest weaknesses. If you look over here, your biggest threats are Lugia, Magnezone, and Crawdon. You'll probably see Lugia sometimes, but Crawdon and Magnezone, you probably won't see those in Open Ultra League. This team is incredibly powerful. It covers a lot of patterns. This is the 1 shield, of course, so there's a lot of play in the 2 shield. As you see, Talonflame is really, really strong. So there's a lot of play around for this team. Does really, really well and covers a lot of things. Your biggest concern is probably, it's not even 1 through 3. I would say it's Lapras. Lapras is probably going to give you a hard time. Because if it ends up like realigning into Politoed, you're kind of in trouble because Politoed gets walled. But other than that, like, that's pretty much the only thing you have to watch out for. This team is insanely powerful. If you do have a Politoed XL, you're in luck because this team is pretty legit and it's super powerful. As you see here, one of the low, like, 616 is a little high, but even then, like, because of the coverage, the bulk, and the sheer pressure this team has, this is a team I if you have a Politoed XL, I definitely recommend you give this a shot. Team number 2 features Talonflame in the lead again, Cresselia save switch, or Giratina in the save as your save switch, and Argira as a closer. Really, this is a double save switch team. I like, well, Cress and Gira it's mega meta, okay? It's just with a Talonflame lead. I really want to make it sound like it's special, but just with a lot of things in Pokemon Go PvP, even though something sounds like it's really, really special, there's actually just a whole bunch of meta stuff in front of it. That's really what it is. Anyways, Talonflame XL is really good with Cresselia and Giratina altered in the back. The reason being is because Cress and Gira have a ton of bulk. Talonflame XL shoves a lot of damage in your face. So with Talonflame XL being able to take shields or threaten a lot of the like top meta in Open Ultra League, Cresselia and Giratina can clean up pretty comfortably. So as you see here, this team has in basically the same thing as Politoed XL, the team I saw you before, just with Giratina replacing it. It's a lot more viable option, but as you see here, it's pretty much just as efficient, and it's pretty freaking powerful. Your biggest, like, I would say the biggest, like, problem you have with this team is probably going to be Giratina Origins. Giratina Origins can threaten you pretty hard. Yes, you can burp it to death, but Giratina Origins just does a ton of damage. As you see here, Giratina Origins, as I mentioned, is your biggest threat. You can still kill it, though. There's a lot of things you can do to kill the Giratina Origins. You can burp it to death, you can Moonblast it to death, and possibly get the debuff, or you can claw it to death, you can claw its eyes out with Dragon Claw. Whichever one you decide to do, Giratina Origins, you have an answer for it. So it's not even that bad. What I really like about this team is that there's a, like, Giratina Origins isn't a super threat, and it gives you that extra, like, oomph against Lapras. Lapras, yes, it's super strong and it's super oppressive. However, if you can chunk it down with Cresselia and Gira altered, then Talonflame's burp hits a lot and it does a lot of damage. So Talonflame really, really good with this core. Cress and Gira altered are readily accessible. So, well, not readily accessible. It's just, you know, they've been out since Season 2. So if you still have them and you really want to use Talonflame XL, guess what? This team is for you. Sports' threat score is 610, so it's a little overcore, but like I said, for Giratina being your only weakness, that's pretty good. Our Giratina Origins, that's pretty dang good, and it does really, really well. Does a lot of damage, has a ton of bulk, will serve you well, and it's not XL dominant other than Talonflame XL. Alright, team number 3 features Swampert, or not, Talonflame in the back. So here's the disclaimer. I don't really recommend you put Talonflame in the back. Yes, it can beat Swampert in the 1 shield, and yes, it can defeat Giratina Altered. It can do a lot of things. But the thing about it is that the reason why Talonflame does so well is because I think it does a better role when you force it in the lead. That's why it's the number 1 lead. Because there's not a lot of things in the meta that resist Brave Bird and Flame Charge, Talonflame can threaten a lot of things, so it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to shield. More so than anything else. So if you leave Talonflame per se, let's say you leave Talonflame in the closer, you got a Swampert in front of it, which is a popular closing pattern, you're pretty much dead. If you have Talonflame in the lead, at least you can pivot out and play keep away until you can take out the Swampert or the water type like the Lapras, etc. And then you can just come back in the back and just like destroy everything else. Or you can burp it to death with Talonflame. Up to you, but I definitely recommend you consider using Talonflame in the lead rather than the closer. But if you do want to use it in the closer, here we go. We got Swampert, Cresselia, Talonflame. Generic team, Swampert, for those of you that love use Swamperts in the lead, because Swampert is a very popular lead, Swampert does really good against Talonflame in the lead. And if you see a lot of Talonflames, it also does really good against Steel types. So Swampert isn't a bad lead for the newer meta. Of course, that can mean you could possibly see more Cresselias in the lead and more Articunos. Well, more Cresselias than Articunos, because Articuno does Talonflame. But yes, as you see here, really great coverage. Covers well against a lot of things. Everything else is still pretty good, so it's not excellent like the other two teams, but you know, it's pretty dang good, and with great coverage, it's really freaking strong. With Swampert lead is very, very powerful, just because of the fact that the steel pattern is very, very popular. So the steel, metal, registeel, or things that Swampert beats. Swampert also outpaces a lot of the meta, with the exception of a Politoed XL. So if you don't see a Politoed XL in the lead, guess what? You're doing pretty dang good. As you see here, you do very well against a lot of meta patterns. Giratina Origins, again, this is probably the only thing that really sucks. Giratina Origins does have it does pretty dang well against all three of these. The problem with Swampert versus Gira-O is that you kind of have to hit Earthquake, and if you don't play the bait game correctly, it's still okay. Like Giratina Origins does a ton of damage, especially if it gets the boost, and it can eat those hydro cannons pretty comfortably. So if you can't force Earthquake, or if you can't force, it's a really dicey matchup. But other than Giratina Origins, as you see, it does well against the rest of a lot of other things. Well, if you play Swampert in the lead, or if you've played Swampert in the lead a lot, if you play Open Ultra League a lot, Swampert's good. That's all you need to know. As you see here, like I mentioned, Gira-O is your biggest threat, along with Lugia. You probably won't see Lugia that much. Giratina-O maybe, but those two patterns are relatively uncommon. Another threat is Gyarados. Gyarados is a little concerning because you could possibly see it in the lead, and because of Gyarados as well. Gyarados, Swampert, it doesn't necessarily well, it technically walls Swampert, but the problem with Swampert technically gets walled. Like, you can still do a chunk of damage, but it takes a few Hydro Cannons for you to take out Gyarados. Gyarados also has a very strong matchup against Talonflame unless you can burb it down. So keep that in mind. Gyarados, not super popular, but it's out there. Arm Mewtwo is also a problem. Side Strike does a ton of damage. It's pretty bulky, so just keep that in mind. You're gonna, there's some picks out here that are gonna give you a little bit of a hard time. Articuno still is a good lead. Even if Talonflame does happen to take over the meta, Articuno still does a ton of great things. You could possibly, Articuno still does a ton of great things. It still does very well against a lot of general patterns. But this is why, as you see here, if you really want to use it, Swampert is there. If you lose leads, pivot to Cresselia and hope that they don't have a Giratina Origins. I'm just kidding. Anyway, as you see here, Talonflame can cover everything in the back. The only issue is it depends on what shield scenario you're in. For example, if you're in a one shield versus Giratina Alter, you kind of have to hit the burb if you want to win. If you fail the bait, it's gonna really suck. But as you see here, you still have a lot of play, and Talonflame XL this team can still do really well for you in Open Ultra League. Alright, team number 4. This team's actually pretty legit. So Bombasnow XL lead, Giratina Altered as your save switch, and Talonflame in the back. Now this team is actually probably the best team I could think of when it comes to putting Talonflame as a closer. Bomba in the lead is a good lead. It beats a lot of things Talonflame doesn't beat in the lead, and it's still really solid. If you look here, this team cover, basically it's the same as the previous team. Lots of coverage, bees and everything, but still pretty dang good. Bombasnow, as I've personally had a lot of experience, it took me to Legend last season. It's still pretty dang good in this meta, with your biggest fear being fire types. The team I played before is very weak to fire, and now that Talonflame XL is out, I don't know if I can play it, but you know what? That's why we got Talonflame. Anyways, if it's on fire, it's on fire, and Talonflame can be on fire in the back with this team. So as you see, against the overall meta, this team does really freaking well. This team, with Bombasnow lead, it puts a ton of pressure on your opponent. If you lose the lead, you switch to Giratina Altered. And Talonflame can usually beat what a Bombasnow cannot, as you see here. There's a ton of play you have with Bombasnow, as long as you can get, this entire team, there's a ton of play to it. As you see here, with a lot of this team, there's Machamp against a lot of other things, you do pretty dang well, and there's a lot of things you can do. Bombasnow has enough pressure to where if you do win the lead, you can probably pressure shields very heavily. And if they throw a Steel type into you, Talonflame is there for that. Except if it's a Reg. The only concern is if they throw a Steel type into you, just throw Giratina Altered into it. So that's pretty much it. Well, the Steel type I'm talking about is Melmetal. Don't throw the reason why this team's kind of hard to run is that you're gonna kind of have to be a little. I know a lot of us are very, very, you've drilled a lot because you play Go Battle League more than the average human being. Or more than the average human being, the higher average human being is what I'm talking about. So you have 3,000-4,000 Great League Battlers, or something of that sort. Anyways, if you are able to anyways, if you have to kind of watch out for switching. Because there are steel types that you will beat. For example, you throw Talonflame into Registeel. You do not throw Talonflame into Melmetal. I've made that mistake before. It sucked. A lot. Anyways, your biggest threats on this team is that there's nothing this team actually covers. Or there's no one mon out here that's actually going to cover this entire team. That's what makes it really, really good. Your biggest threats are basically Alolan Muck. And the thing about Alolan Muck, you can beat Alolan Muck in the 2-shield. You can also beat Articuno in the 2-shield. You can beat Gengar in the 2-shield. So Abomasnow kind of plugs in those holes that Talonflame does not in the lead. And you can still pivot out of a lot of things. As you see here, this team is very, very powerful. Does really, really well. And it actually has the best threat score that I could possibly make out of everything. Without making obscenely overpowered Pokemon. For example, like, you know, like Registeel XL. Abomasnow's XL has been out for a minute. You gear alter it as well, so you probably can get both. You probably have both, or you're probably thinking about building both. But this team is definitely the best team I could think of other than the other team that I'm about to show you. So this team is very strong, very, very powerful, and definitely worth looking into if you're looking to combine Abomasnow XL along with Talonflame XL, because Abomasnow XL is still really powerful in this meta, even though Talonflame is here. And without further ado, I present to you the most powerful team in Open Ultra League that I could possibly think of in this league. Now, the problem is when you put something... What I mean by the most powerful one usually requires something that's really, really inaccessible or just stupid expensive to make. If you have grinded like a madman, and I mean above the average madman, and you've literally rated Registeel like your life depended on it, or really hunted it down, Registeel XL in Ultra League is the most Open Ultra League is the most powerful Pokemon in the entire league statistically. For a reason, it's insanely powerful, and as an XL, the tankiness and the sheer bulk it has, along with Lock-On, basically makes it like godly, or not really godly, but just insanely powerful. If you thought Registeel was oppressive at 40, at 50, this thing is a monster. So usually I call it the trash can. Well, trash is like someone's trash is another person's treasure. Have you ever heard that quote? Registeel XL is the treasure of Open Ultra League, and if you have one, it's pretty much just, it does a lot of damage. As you see here, Registeel XL, Talonflame, and Giratina together have a very, very powerful combination of coverage and bulk. Also decent that like it's good. He's good. As you see here, this team does very, very well by using Talonflame in the lead. Yes, like by putting Talonflame in the lead, you break shields, Giratina, Alter, and Registeel can clean up. If your opponent loses lead against things like for example, if they throw a Cresselia into it as a safe switch, so you win lead, they throw Cresselia as a safe switch, you wall Registeel. That's a pretty common combination. Targeting the space duck in the back, that's a popular safe switch, and using Registeel to wall it. It's happened to me plenty of times. Have I still won? Yes. Have I lost most of the time? Yes. But Registeel is very, very powerful, especially as an XL. As you see here, this thing absolutely destroys a lot of the top meta picks. As you can see here, it literally forces up to like it does so much damage, it's ridiculous. And it's really, really good. So the biggest concern is that Gyarados is it's not super popular, but it's common, so you can see it. Not a lot, but more often than not. So Gyarados does do a number on this team. However, because Registeel XL is so oppressive, it can do a ton of damage. So you still have play against Gyarados. You're probably not going to see a Garchomp anytime, anywhere. If you do see a Garchomp in Ultra League, I have no idea what's going on. That person is a madman, and it's actually not that bad in Ultra, but as you see here, Gyarados is your biggest threat. You can still burp through shields for Gyarados. There's still plays you can make against Gyarados. It's just Gyarados is really good in Open Ultra League as a safe switch. So it's really, really good. As you see here, that's your biggest threat. Little lower, little high on the spectrum. Well, not really high on the spectrum. Really good against the overall meta at 597. Very, very good for Open Ultra League. The biggest hurdle is, of course, Registeel is XL. So the trash can is basically super powerful. I don't know any universe where you're probably gonna get a Registeel XL soon, but I've seen a few people on Twitter get like level 50 Mewtwo, so anything is possible. If you have someone out there that's willing to shell out the money and shell out the obscene amount of time it takes to raid Registeel or trade Registeels to get an XL, well, they're gonna have one. And even though it can be beat, it's just so dang powerful that it does even though like Flash Cannon and Focus Blast did get nerfed back in the day, guess what? Level 50 just made Registeel the most powerful Pokemon in Ultra League again. So it's not plausible you'll see this. If you do see it, it's dang. That's all I have to say. Some people do have Registeel as like some people do have like level 45 through 46 Registeels. That still does really well. You can still like even if you don't have a level 50 Registeel. Like even if you don't have like a full level 50, so say you say like yeah Registeel XL, like let's say that, it still does very, very well. So even if you don't have optimum IVs, it's still very, very powerful. Still does a lot of damage. So still same threats, just keep in mind that like it's still really, really good. Hopefully these teams help you out. I gave you a good option for Open Ultra League. Many of you probably will not play this league, that's why I did not prioritize it over Ultra Premier. However, Talonflame is best used in Open Ultra League. So this is actually, Open Ultra is actually the best league where Talonflame can shine. Hopefully the teams I gave you will allow you to help you a lot in Open Ultra League. I've made Legend Open Ultra League, so it is possible. Even though Ultra League is one of the most hated, Open Ultra is one of the most hated things of all time, because Cresselia, Melmetal, and Registeel, and just legendaries and mythicals in general, it's still, like, there's still, I would say it's a little easier to read metas in Open Ultra than it would be in Ultra Premier, because Ultra Premier is just chaos. Hopefully, again, I hope this guy really does help you out. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets, and I will see you guys on the next video.